Hey guys, welcome back to the show. If you're listening to this show the day that it drops, today is Black Friday. So hopefully you will take a moment to listen to this one just in case this might be something you are ready to lean into because you get to save a ton of money. And so I'll talk about that in the proper intro for the podcast. But in the meantime, I'd love to invite you. First of all, thank you for being here. Without you guys, I don't get to do what I love every single day. And so for that, I am super grateful. And also I'd love to invite you to join my newsletter at natnidham.com. We have two different newsletters going. You can be signed up for both or just one. One is dedicated to peptides. And then the other one is the general newsletter that talks about all kinds of different things like biohacks I'm loving right now. We talk about podcast episodes in case you want a snapshot, the whole 9 yards. Okay, let's talk about the episode. In this longevity podcast episode, I am joined by Connie Zack, the co-founder of Sunlighten, to discuss the incredible longevity, detoxification, cardiovascular health, and immune system benefits of infrared saunas. I've been using an infrared sauna now for the better part of the last 3 months, and I've got to tell you guys, it is life-changing. Now, in this episode, we explore the differences between traditional sauna and how infrared saunas are truly light and energy therapy coupled with heat, generating deep benefits in the areas of detox, recovery, and much, much more. You're going to learn about the different wavelengths of infrared and the benefits that each delivers, and surprising information about how hot you really need to get. Spoiler alert, not nearly as hot as you think, to get the benefits of infamous heat shock proteins, powerful anti-aging compounds that are produced by the body in response to extremes in temperature. Now, Connie Zack is an entrepreneur, wellness enthusiast, wife, and mother. She regularly speaks at events around the world and served on the P&G Women's Board to cultivate a practice of mentoring young women and supporting their professional development. She continues to guide and encourage female entrepreneurs all the way up to today. Now, she co-founded Sunlighten in 2002 after seeing how spending time in an infrared sauna supported her brother's healing journey from traumatic health issues. Connie and her husband, Aaron, both left thriving corporate careers and made a commitment to research-backed innovation that enabled them to revolutionize the infrared sauna industry. So to learn more about Sunlighten and to get your hands on their big Black Friday deal, as listeners of this podcast, to save on your purchase of your Sunlighten, whatever Sunlighten model you decide, you'll want to go to sunlighten.com and use code NATLongevity to access special savings. Now, if you're listening to this podcast on November 29th, you actually have 5 days to take advantage of their Black Friday sale, which will offer up to $1,000 of savings off your purchase. And all you have to do is go to sunlighten.com and use code NATLongevity. Now let's jump into the episode. Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Welcome to the show. Connie, it is such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this great conversation about longevity today. It's one of my favorite topics.
Me too. Me too. And I was telling you that I wish that my reception in my basement was good enough because we could have done like a Sunlighten sauna podcast together. I would have even turned on my red lights. It would have been amazing.
Oh
anyway,
gosh, that would have been awesome.
You do have the perfect backdrop. So for you guys who are just listening to this, you can't see, but Connie's got a beautiful backdrop of the Sunlighten impulse behind her. And we're going to talk today. We're going to explore what the story is with infrared saunas. We're going to talk a little bit about traditional saunas, how everything, how they differ in many ways, what the research says. But before we do that, I would love to know, I think you are the founder. You're the person that has been, this is your passion. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what got you into this, and because I know it kind of dovetails into the story of infrared.
Yeah. So Over 20 plus years ago, my brother was really, really sick and he had heavy metal toxicity as diagnosed by his dentist because his mercury fillings were leaking into his body.
Mm.
And that is what was causing him to have such chronic fatigue and vertigo, inflammation. He was really, really sick and he was really young, but he couldn't do anything. And our family couldn't go on vacation. It was a horrible, horrible time. And his dentist is the one that recommended infrared because he had read that infrared could potentially detoxify the body from heavy metals. And so my brother bought an infrared sauna and it changed his life. And I was working at Procter and Gamble in the pharmaceutical division at the time.
Wow.
And so I started to do some research on infrared in the medical library and found that infrared did indeed have significant impact on the cardiovascular system specifically. And I was on the cardiovascular team at P&G. We're really working hard to bring antihypertensives to market that didn't have side effects, and which was really hard to do. And I read all this great data about how infrared could help make a healthier heart without side effects. I was like, oh my gosh, nobody knows about this. This is like a magic in a, in a box. Like, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. So I left my job and I've committed the rest of my life to bringing this wonderful healing technology, to, the masses and to the world. And I'm, very passionate and committed on helping people understand the value and helping them understand the science, and as well as, more importantly, really than the science is, what is it and how does it make you feel? And why am I so passionate about it, and why should it be a part of your lifestyle?
I love it. And I will say, for those of you who can't see Connie, she's got stunningly beautiful skin.
Oh,
so that
so
we know is a benefit of the red and infrared lights. So we're going to talk about that. But one of the things that we when I first became acquainted with Sunlighten, and this is going back a few months now, I had really interesting interactions with your marketing director. And one of the things that she said to me, and that's always stayed with me, and it's really defined it's when I had my aha moment about the infrared sauna over traditional saunas. And that is that she said, Nat, like, what we're delivering, and you said this at the beginning before we recorded, you said, what we're delivering is light therapy. And in the biohacking space or the longevity space or whatever space you happen to be in that's brought you here, we talk about light all the time. We talk about how we are deprived of our light because we spend so much time indoors. We don't get outside enough. And whether it's climate or work or whatever the heck it is that's keeping you inside, we are electrical and light beings. And that disconnect from light has come at a very, very high cost to our health. So maybe I was wondering if you might want to talk about that a little bit, because I want to talk, and we're not throwing traditional saunas under the bus, guys. I think if you can walk away from this episode understanding the nuance and the difference between these two types of therapies, and maybe we use the word sauna around infrared just to give you a handle on really where we're at, but it's a very different animal than a traditional sauna.
Yeah, so I like to compartmentalize the differences between infrared and traditional in three different ways. So first, we talk about heat, because everybody's familiar with heat, especially in a traditional sauna. What that feels like, it's hot air, it's convectional heat. You get hot because the air is hot. So kind of a simple formula. Infrared heat does heat you. It just heats you as a byproduct of your body being warm versus the air. So it is not as high of a heat than as traditional is. You get warm because your body is absorbing the energy. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but that's the kind of just the quick concept of the heat in traditional and the heat in infrared. And the second, which is what I was talking about before we started, recording, that I'm so passionate about, is the light energy. So infrared has light versus, traditional is just heat. And you break down, which is the third difference, which is a spectrum within a spectrum. So infrared is this spectrum of light. The majority of heat, light, the majority of the rays that come from the sun are in the infrared spectrum. And there's three different main parts of light. And we do not get as much light into our bodies as we used to. And it affects us because our bodies are solar panels. If you just think about that for a second, we need light energy to activate our mitochondria and our cells. And there are so many mitochondria in our body. They're in every single part of our body. And if they're not activated, then slowly but surely you are accelerating the aging process, and you
100%.
need that activation in order to slow down the aging process. So back to the spectrum of light, it breaks down into 3 ways: far, mid, and near, which is invisible light. And then there's also red light that a lot of people are familiar with, that's right next door to near infrared, but that's visible and near infrared is invisible.
Yeah.
And they each have their own special magical transformation properties, the way they work with the body. It's really spectacular. And the fact that we can actually receive all of that light and heat in one place, it's like a whole body longevity tool. It's just absolutely amazing. So we can talk about what everything, how they all work and whatever you want to know, but that's a very high level of the what makes infrared different from traditional heat, light, and the spectrum.
100%. And I love that. I love this whole dialogue around the light and activating mitochondria. And if there's one thing this audience knows, like we talk about mitochondria all the time. I just released a podcast recently from a company that measures mitochondrial function without punching holes in people's quads. What a concept.
That's very cool.
And we understand that the mitochondria as these energy factories, but also as environment sensing organelles in the cells, are critical to our survival in every way, shape, or form. So everything that we can do to encourage them and to support them and to keep them healthy and keep them turning over is going to be beneficial. So let's talk a little bit. I mean, we may as well just dive into the different bands of light, different frequencies to understand, because, the way when I did my research and, before I did that talk for you guys at HOS in June, is when I really started to understand, like, it's almost like you're targeting different layers of tissue with the different frequencies of light. And that's not something, and I find that for me, the infrared sauna is a much more nuanced tool than the traditional sauna in a sense, because as you explained, and as we know, the traditional sauna needs to superheat the air so that the body can get that superheat. And what we're getting in the body, obviously, we're having a cardiovascular response, we're producing heat shock proteins, all that kind of stuff. Turns out we're producing heat shock proteins. We don't need to get to that place where we think that our eyelashes are going to singe. It can be pretty intense. And for some people, that's what they need. But for a lot of people, a traditional sauna is very, very difficult to tolerate because it's just too much, right? So let's dive into the mid, the near, and the far infrared and talk about what each one is targeting. And then we can also maybe talk a little bit about, you talked about heavy metals. I know that there's a really cool study called I think it's the BUS study.
Yeah, BUS study.
Yeah, that talks about where they analyze the sweat of people with different therapies. And we can talk about the heavy metals that were released.
Yeah, so much to talk about.
Yeah, so much to talk about. You may never make that meeting. But let's get started.
Look, first, let's think about infrared as energy medicine. Okay, so it's like, and I'm not sure I love the word medicine in this context, because I like to think of it as like just like it's energy interacting, with your body in the ways you need it most, where you need it most. So it helps to, with the spectrum, have this broad effect as well as a deep effect. So you get both benefits. So we'll start with far, because that's really the foundational wavelength. And that's how we started. So I always call back to the basement, because when we started the company, we were in a basement and up to our eyeballs in debt. And,
oh my God.
It was very, very painful first couple of years. And I also then you layer on the fact that I had no idea what I was doing. And, I didn't know anything about infrared. I knew pharmaceutical all day long and science, but I didn't know anything about this, magical wavelength. But anyway, so far infrared is the foundational wavelength. That is the one, as you said, like affects the body at different levels. It is absorbed very deep into the body, and it is absorbed by your water molecules in your mitochondria, and it really helps to, activate your flow and increase your circulation and really start that detoxification process that's so important. And it helps to increase your core temperature, which is incredibly valuable. I mean, if you think of like ancient medicine and a lot of theories or ways that we used to treat the body lots of times has issues because it's too cold. And we need to find ways. That's why people, like hot tea and chicken soup and a lot of things. Why does that feel so good to your body? It's because it warms you up, and it's really important. When you warm up the body, you start that flow. And so many people are stuck in their bodies, and flow is really important. And so I try when I'm explaining infrared to kind of give the visual of flow and energy and just life and vitality and how important this wavelength is to create this, energy medicine impact on the body. So FAR is all about that flow, increasing circulation, detoxification. Oh, other part that is so great about FAR is it gets the oxygen through your tissues and into your brain. So you'll notice that when you're inside your Sunlighten, whether you're in far infrared alone or in impulse, your brain completely wakes up, and it just helps get rid of the mind chatter and get rid of the mental fog, and just helps bring that mental clarity to your brain. So that's one of I could talk about all the benefits forever, but I'm trying to categorize them in chunks according to the wavelengths. So then mid, it doesn't go as deep into the body, and it really targets your joints and your tissues. I like to think of mid as your muscle recovery wavelength. It really helps, athletes use it a lot, post workouts. It's really important after you work out to recover the muscles. If you're straining the muscles and you're activating your heat shock proteins, you want to also have time to recover. And that's what mid is so great for. And also helps aid with weight loss when used with far infrared. And then those are the two heat sources. So those two wavelengths are felt by the body as heat, far and mid. So now we're going to switch over to the power of the light transformation, the light energy. And we'll start with near infrared. That one is invisible.
Okay.
And when we launched Impulse originally 14 years ago, we only focused on near because all of the scientists that we worked with that studied near with NASA and had all the information knew that near penetrates the skin the deepest. Out of between near and red, near goes the deepest. So if we were only going to do one, we wanted the one that goes the deepest and has the most therapeutic impact. And then what's great about near is its impact on the skin, as well as it also impacts the mitochondria, but at a more surface level. So it's really great for creating those engines. And really, I always think of it when it comes to near and red as being that source that makes your body the Energizer Bunny, So it's like it just helps to activate and give you that just endless energy that makes you feel great, makes you feel like you can do so much, more than you thought you could, and just gives you that zest, that kick in your step that you really a lot of times, need. So, and also near helps with collagen and elastin. So that's really important. And then red is very similar. In fact, it's almost identical to near, with the exception of it doesn't penetrate as deep. So on conditions such as brain and cognitive function, near infrared is really the ideal wavelength because it goes a little bit deeper. When you use the two together, there is a synergistic effect, which is why we've added red now to to impulse. So you can you can have all four. But it really, when you combine all four of those, as you so beautifully said, you're targeting the body in so many different areas. So it does impact every single system in the body. There is nothing that it is not, providing an impact to. So I always call it like the whole body longevity tool, because, you're in one place and you're getting so much to help you turn back that biological clock.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting what you just said about feeling energized, because, and it depends on, and we'll get into a little bit of the particulars, but you have one model called the Impulse that delivers, it kind of has different programs, and it allows you as the user to say, okay, I just came out of a really tough workout. I'm going to be dying later on. So I can pick, the pain relief or the relaxation program, or, I really want to focus on detoxification right now. And that's going to be a different program, because, what's beautiful about the Impulse is it's going to deliver a different, like almost like a different protocol of light, depending on what the goal is of whatever session you're in there. And, I think that, and you probably know that, I'm sure you know this from your brother, when someone is detoxifying, there's some work to be done here to support the body, because you don't always come out of the sauna feeling like $100 or $1 million. Sometimes you feel like $4. Like, there's when the body is releasing toxins. And I would love to talk about that the BUS study, because we always, and I remember when I went back to school to become a nutritionist, we always talked about making sure that the pathways of the doors of open detoxification were open, right? Because if you're mobilizing and releasing toxins into, whether it's into the lymphatic system or into circulation, and in the case of the sauna, you're also releasing it through the skin, we need to make sure that those toxins are removed. Otherwise, they're just looking for a new home. And that doesn't always feel fantastic. So I would love to talk a little bit about this whole detoxification process. And I have a protocol that I use around when I'm going to do the detox protocol, but maybe let's talk a little bit about the BUS study and what it brought to light, pun intended.
I like that.
About how light therapy kind of moves the toxins in a different way, or maybe is able to target different types of toxins.
Yeah, so in the BUS study, that stands for blood, urine, and sweat, it looked at how, what toxins were removed with blood, urine, and sweat. And some of the key findings of that I think are really powerful, that to emphasize the impact of sweat, is that infrared specifically, it also measured infrared versus traditional versus exercise. And infrared did come out as the modality that had the most impact on removing toxins. And there was the insight that I always pull from that study, because it goes way back to this foundation of our company, which is, mercury toxicity, is that when blood and urine were measured, none of the participants had any mercury in their blood, but 100% of that group, the 15%, had mercury in their sweat. So that's so powerful. And I remember when we first started the company, learning about mercury and learning how hard it is. How heavy it is.
Yeah.
It's just such a challenge to get it out of your body once it gets in. And it is, I didn't know this is a long time ago, right? 20 plus years ago, almost 25 years ago. I had no idea of the volume of mercury in, so many things that are around us, in our fish and our, cosmetics and all those different things. And gosh, it's really scary when you think of, okay, that starts to get in your body. And if you're not mobilizing, your cells and your body and helping to make sure you're staying healthy, then, like, as you just said, then everything just gets trapped and gets heavy and you get sick. It's like people who have hormones that are off balance, and then they start taking more hormones because they think, but then everything is just it's revolving in a washing machine, but it's not being removed.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that you do need to remove it. And that study just shows the impact and the importance of removing toxins through sweat, and how, you may think, if you're doing other analysis of blood, you may think that you don't have, those toxins in your body, but they may still be there. It's kind of a scary thought, right? They may still be there, even though they're not coming out in a blood test.
Well, I think by the time you've got mercury showing up in your blood test, you're super toxic, because the body is wise, right? If there's one thing we know, is that the human body is a wonder that we still in many ways don't understand. But we do know that the body looks to sequester toxins whenever it can. And very often it does that in fat tissue. And the bad news with mercury, and especially mercury that's coming from your fillings in your mouth, is that stuff can end up in your brain, because your brain is made up of fat. Like, we know this. And chelation therapy is sometimes it's necessary, but it's a very brutal, unpleasant, difficult. Like, I know people who were brought to their knees in chelation therapy. Like, it took months and months and months. And I think that one of the big benefits of having access to this type of therapy that can gradually kind of move inventory out. And as you said so aptly, we're exposed to mercury on an ongoing basis, right? So if we can just clear it even a little bit at a time, whether it's 3 times a week or 5 times a week or 6 times a week, you just prevent, hopefully, that overflow of the bucket where we end up in a place where we really feel it in a negative way. But I think in that study, wasn't there also cadmium? There were a few other heavy metals that showed up in the sweat that I think for those of us living in big cities is a big deal, because we're breathing this stuff in every single day, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, there were a lot. There was cadmium, there was arsenic, there was lead, there was bismuth. I mean, there was a lot of toxins. The mercury is one I always mention, just because it's such a challenge, if you have mercury in your body, and you really can't, if you just live a normal life, you really can't avoid all these toxic chemicals. I mean, you really think of plastics, and you think, gosh, I do everything I can. I mean, I use glass. I mean, I'm very, very choiceful of, everything I put in my body, everything I put in my kids' bodies. But then, every now and then I'll look at the back of, I just did this with my husband. We're looking at one of my favorite chips, and I looked at the ingredients, and I was like, oh no, they're using an oil that I don't want in my body. And thought, everything else about the ingredients was all natural, and everything about, everything else. I was like, I love these chips.
Not anymore.
I know, not anymore. I know. I had somebody who asked me for, and I said, I'm not even going to screenshot them, because you don't want them. I'm going to keep searching until I find something that has, the oils that I choose to put in my body.
Well, and then you get, and I mean, unfortunately, the packaged goods companies, the CPG companies, they're very good at producing a product that people love. The hyperpalatable foods, but also things like, even I'll never forget when I first learned about the chemicals that they use to coat the bags of cereal so that the cereal stays crunchy longer. And I was like, come on, you can't be serious. And unfortunately, it's in the quest for market share and the quest for making things that people just can't resist.
Yeah.
There's lines have to be crossed, and it's not always with the same goals in mind that we have when we're putting things in our mouths. Okay. Right. So that said, so we have tools, right? So let's just talk a little bit. Also, you talked a lot about benefits for the cardiovascular system. So let's get into that, because again, this is another one where I feel like people believe that you need to get to those crazy high heats so that the heart is pumping, and the heart does pump, make no mistake. But let's talk a little bit about how this different approach that's tapping into the magic of light therapy and energy therapy is also going to help strengthen the cardiovascular system in a gentler way that, it's funny. I think as North Americans, we're kind of like CrossFit. You've got to no pain, no gain. You got to suffer to be beautiful or to be good or to be strong. And sometimes maybe we just don't need to beat the body up that badly and we're still going to get a really great result. So
yeah, I think of that a lot when I'm in my sauna, because I have that CrossFit that comes to mind, because I do strength training, and there are some times when I'm doing strength training when I'm just like, okay, I've got to get through this. And it's like, like literally you have to mentally train your brain to get through it. Mm-hmm. And I always think when I'm inside my Sunlighten, this is so easy and I am enjoying it so much and I feel so fabulous and I'm not doing anything. Like it's like crazy. It's like the perfect marriage between like exercise, like active, which is not, is passive cardiovascular conditioning, but it's like the perfect marriage of passive cardiovascular conditioning with the changing the nervous system from the sympathetic state to the parasympathetic state, but you're not doing anything to do that. It's just such a great marriage. So anyway, I got off task of the question on the cardiovascular.
No, but that's okay,
system.
Because I think what you bring up is that, it's, and I'm not adverse to suffering.
Right. I'm not either. I put myself through it twice a week.
Exactly. Like, I think it's important to suffer. It's important to push ourselves, but do we need to have that in every piece? And that's where I think, the sunlight becomes that other S word. It becomes a sanctuary. It becomes a healing place. It becomes a recovery tool. So anyway, let's get back to cardiovascular, because then I have a whole other system I want to talk about.
Okay, great. Yeah, so cardiovascular is one of my favorite benefits because it has been studied for so many years. So, I mean, there is so much data from 25 years ago, and that to me is just validates, the impact that infrared has on the cardiovascular system. So to break it down and make it, as easy to understand as possible, let's go back to that whole flow. So when infrared energy is absorbed into your body, it literally starts, you just can kind of picture your cells like dancing around and moving. That's literally what they're doing. And as a result of all of that movement and that vibration that's happening, that's when the core temperature starts to increase. And that's really what starts everything to move and flow and thin out. So if you picture, your arteries and everything being like thick and maybe congested, the infrared, that heat is working on them to make it fluid and to increase the flow so that you're getting a healthier, circulatory system. That increase in circulation helps every single system, right? It helps the brain, as I talked about, and it helps the heart. It helps the endothelial lining. It helps with coronary artery disease. It's actually in Japan, the first line treatment for congestive heart failure. So
really,
it has been studied for so many years.
This is infrared.
Yeah, infrared. And also you touched on something that I really love this, and I'm really working on helping people understand the shift to the extremes, to not only the extremes, but also in, brief versus like duration. So meaning that there was a study called the Weigh-On study back forever ago that studied infrared for 5 years, people using infrared for 5 years in Asia. The power of this study that I want to mention that goes in with our conversation is they were only using it for 15 minutes a day. That's not a lot of time.
No.
And they used it. It was 169 patients off the top of my head that did it for 5 years. And when they compared the group that used infrared against people who didn't, the majority decreased hospitalization and death compared to those that did not. So it reduced, people, die. I mean, you can't really have a better benefit than not going to the hospital and living longer, and it was only 15 minutes a day. I love that statement, because so often people think, oh, I've got to do it for, 45 minutes and I have to do it, for 7 days a week. And, you don't. I mean, it's better to do 15 minutes a day, than nothing. And it's definitely making an impact, by helping, increase circulation. As soon as you step in, that energy is being absorbed into the body and starts to take action and starts to go to work. So on your behalf.
Yeah. And I, you keep saying this and I want to keep highlighting it to the people who are listening is you're bringing energy into the body. And that's a very different equation. One of the things that I talked about in my presentation was about easy water. It was about activating the water in the cells. And maybe you can speak to that a little bit, because I think that this is an audience that's relatively sophisticated. They're not unfamiliar with this concept of better water, of water that is structured so that it acts better and is more healthy. And the water in the extracellular matrix inside the cell and then inside the cells also, like whatever we can do to basically, improve the charge of the water, if it will, or the structure of the water is going to benefit our health at a very, very high level, like way upstream, kind of in terms of all of the efficiencies that the body needs to bring to bear when it's trying to do what it needs to do for us.
Yeah. And the whole concept of easy water, I find it fascinating. And because I never understood. So let me take a step back. So back in the basement, when I was first learning and we were introduced to this product called the Sunlighten Solo, that was introduced to us from a company in Taiwan. And that's really where the foundation of far infrared, where we learned about the importance of maximizing the absorption of infrared into the body. And we really committed to producing the most absorbed wavelength on the market, and we patented it, and it changed our whole company. But that happened with the Sunlighten Solo. My point of talking about that is we kind of did our own N of 3 study back in the basement, because we were using a wooden cabin that had, we had evolved from steel. It had ceramic heaters, small little ceramic heaters that delivered infrared. But then this Solo had these carbon panels, and the experience between the sweat, how I felt, how all of us felt after a Solo versus after the ceramic was completely different. I mean, and I'm bringing it back to the easy water, so don't worry.
Yeah, okay. I'm good.
It was fascinating, because the biggest difference that I found, there were so many differences, but the biggest one was the energy level. I felt so supercharged when I got out of that Solo. I mean, I really felt like, oh my gosh, like it's like back in college where all of a sudden, you're studying and you're like zapped, and like, then, you go and get some coffee or whatever. And then you're like, okay, I can do 6 more hours or whatever, and that's how I felt. I remember that very first session, and everybody had that exact same experience. And it wasn't the same experience in the other infrared sauna. And so then fast forward, when, learning about, Pollack's fourth phase of water, or, exclusion zone water, essentially talks about how the water, in your body, it changes. And it's important that change is important for creating energy, and how you feel. And infrared, we now know infrared is one of the solutions. It's one of the ways that can energize your water molecules and can change the structure of them so that you have more energy. And it also happens when you're out in the sun. Again, infrared is part of the sun, so that is also a way to, activate that transition of the third phase of water into the fourth phase of water, which is what causes, you to have more energy. And, I just, connecting the dots for me was magical, because I was like, I always wondered, what is it about this experience that is giving me so much more energy? And then, I grew to understand. And if you think about your body, the majority of your body is water, right? Like, so you're changing, but you can even look at, if you're blending water or if you're heating water, and there's, different ways you see the different change in structure of water, and it makes a difference in how you feel.
100%. I love it. Actually, there's actually a recent study. I don't know where I was recently, that there's, I want to say it's a Japanese lab, but I could be wrong about that, where they just did a study. They did a study on water, an energy study. And I don't know if you've probably heard this, where they spoke to the water. And so one group said really nasty things to the water. Like,
oh, cool.
Did you hear about this?
No, I love it.
So it was like anger and selfishness and really mean, nasty, horrible things. And then they took the water and they froze it. And then they had another group with water. And they said love and romance and empathy and sympathy, all the beautiful language, maybe prayers over it. And then they froze that. And then under a microscope, they looked at the water, and the crystals of the water that received the positive energy were stunning. The crystallization of the water that received the negative energy was completely disorganized. It's the most fascinating study.
That is fascinating.
I'm going to have to go dig it up.
Yeah, I would love.
If I can find it, I'm going to put it in the show notes along with the other studies that we just mentioned.
Yeah, I would love to see that, because I am, just a huge believer, and I have so many examples. I mean, we could be here for days talking about the different examples of how energy impacts you, and positive energy versus negative energy, and just being intuitive to it, and knowing when to activate. And it just is, it's really, it's fascinating. But we are, our bodies are so sensitive to energy, right? Yeah. And so let's take advantage of the knowledge that, we're talking about today, because we know there's this powerful energy transformation, wavelength called infrared that works with the body in like the perfect marriage. Mm-hmm. It activates, and it increases flow, and it decreases stress. And the way it brings balance to the body in the ways that we need it, and then revs up in the other ways, like the energy, is just, it's like it's just like the perfect dose of energy, for your body.
Well, it's as you're talking, I think that what's interesting about the infrared energy sauna that we're talking about here, it's less hormetic stressor and more energizing. Right. So we talk about hormetic stress being jumping into a tub of ice, or sitting in a traditional sauna, or working out until you think your head's going to pop off, but it doesn't. So you stop right before that point. And these are stressors. This is in the school of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, which is great. But I think that when we're talking about this type of therapy, if you will, or, this type of modality, we're leaning less into the hormesis. We're moving more into just straight therapeutic. And so it's part of the reason why it's more activating the parasympathetic system than it is the sympathetic system, so that people who are super stressed probably can tolerate an infrared sauna much more easily than they could going into a traditional sauna that really requires them, again, to dig deep and kind of have the fortitude when what their body really needs is a break. So these are nuances, right? And so there are differences. So I do want to mention,
I do want to mention on that note of hormesis, because it is important. So everything that you just said is, 100% accurate. I want to build on it in the fact that there is data showing that even low levels of heat do activate the heat shock proteins, and do cause, yes, it's a less level of hormesis than, shocking it from zero to, for sure, but you are still shocking your body.
Yeah.
So, you are still getting some benefits of hormesis that is so important to the body, and you are still getting those wonderful heat shock proteins that are, I always call them the personal trainers for their cells. They're like, okay, Connie, you're doing great.
Yeah. Well, I love you brought that up because I didn't mean to leave people thinking that there's no hormetic stress here. It's just not quite as intense. But I do remember that I do know that heat shock proteins get produced actually. What was it? I think it was Kendra that told me, like, you could sit in a bathtub that's like 100 degrees or 104 degrees. You'd have to sit there for an hour, but you would produce heat shock proteins. In this sauna, you're getting up to 135, 140 degrees. So you're producing heat shock proteins. It's just in a different dose dependent way kind of thing.
Right. In an enjoyable way that you can do other things. That's, another one of my practical applications of my sauna is it's one of the few, I don't want to say only because I'm sure there's something else, but it's one of the few modalities that you can enjoy other wellness routines while you are receiving the heat and the light into your body. So you can have heat and light coming in. You can also do breath work. You can also meditate. You can also journal. You can do yoga. I mean, whatever your other favorite, wellness modalities are, you can incorporate that while you're doing it. So you get 2, 3, 4, 5 things in one.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I do it. I mean, and speaking to the easy water and the positive energy, what's one of the really lovely features of at least the model that I have is that it'll connect to my phone and I can listen to music, or I can listen to a guided meditation if I want. Now I could listen to a podcast, but I wouldn't necessarily, I try to discourage people of working in their sauna because, but if push comes to shove and it's either get in the sauna and do some work or don't get in the sauna, you're better off getting in the sauna and doing some work and getting the benefits at the same time. But I also want to point out what you said earlier, which I think is really important. And that is that, if you can get out into the sunlight and get your feet on the ground, you will get that solar energy. You'll get the light energy. It's just so much harder for us to get it.
Yes.
Also, and not destroy your skin from the sun. It gets so complicated out there.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because somebody just asked me this weekend and it really took me back. And I'm glad you brought the sun part up because they said, Connie, help me understand. I'm really confused about UVA and UVB and am I going to get burned? And, am I going to get a tan when I'm in there? And I was like, oh, wow, I haven't thought about this in a long time. But it brought me back to the basement of all those were common. I mean, there was completely different questions that people used to ask me 20 years ago compared to today, for sure. Oh my gosh, that would be an interesting podcast in itself. But one of the questions was about, the UV. And so just so everybody, I'm sure everybody that listens to you knows this, but just, in case, infrared, that wavelength does not have any of the ultraviolet rays. So there is no worries about, sun exposure as far as changing your melanin or anything like that. You're getting the healing parts of light energy without the rays that, could cause you to burn or could cause harm. So that's just important. I always, my visual for the infrared wavelength for the spectrum is just like this funnel. It's like we've taken this, beautiful sun, bring it inside and we're filtering out, as we're going down the funnel, we're filtering out all of the other parts that we don't need for the body. And we're just making and delivering the highest absorption, the most infrared dense product, that you can receive, and just press a button and enjoy the show. You go.
I love it. And I mean, look, there's a place for UVA and UVB, but they're definitely more problematic. And this isn't the time and the space. So that's not what you're doing here. There's a couple of other areas I'd love to explore with you. Sure. The next one, I want to explore another human system that benefits a lot, I think, from infrared sauna, and that's the immune system. And then I want to get into a little bit more brass tacks about EMFs and materials and off-gassing and that kind of stuff. But I would love to, one of the things that I think many people might make an analogy of this is when the body is trying to overcome a pathogen, it produces a fever. And that fever, that internal heat, is what allows the immune system to function in a different way at a different level. You've got different enzymes that are activated. It's a beneficial thing. And it's that interesting thing where, as a parent, when you're a new parent and your baby for the very first time has like a low grade fever, and you're like, oh, you got to run for the Tylenol or whatever to suppress the fever. And understanding, actually, if we could, as long as it doesn't get too high, if we can allow that to exist for a little while, it is part of the body's defense mechanisms against pathogens. I mean, obviously, if it starts to climb and get out of control, we have to take action. But so maybe can we talk a little bit about how the infrared sauna is beneficial, has benefits also for the immune system, which is arguably, top of mind for everybody all the time these days.
Yeah. In fact, I was, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, I was at this awesome conference, PLMI. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Bland. And,
oh, yeah.
And he had a stat, and I hope I say it exactly correct, but it was relating immune system to longevity in the biological clock, and essentially saying that it is, out of all the different systems, that's the system that can accelerate your aging the fastest. And in reverse, as far as your, biological clock, and everybody's, working so hard trying to get that as low as possible, as young as possible. That's also the immune system. If you can find a way to do that, that's one of the quickest ways to do that. And his suggestion was one of the greatest indicators of that is your mitochondria. Mm-hmm. So, we'll take it one step further. We also know that infrared, can help. We talked a little bit about how infrared helps your mitochondria, but what's great, it can really increase the function of your mitochondria. It can literally make more engines, both the light and the heat, because they're working in different ways. And that's, I mean, there's so much data on red light and near infrared and helping with, mitochondrial function, increasing, energy, and then as well as, far infrared and mid infrared. So that's one of the easiest ways to explain how it can help with the immune system, because it's helping get your mitochondria active and healthy and as many as possible working on your behalf. So that's one way. As you mentioned, infrared, and we did a study, years ago on your core temperature, and we showed in only 30 minutes, infrared could increase your core temperature up to 3 degrees. So that's really a lot in a short amount of time. And we know that when you increase your core temperature, viruses and irregular cells, they just can't thrive. And if you're doing it on a regular basis, that's a great way, to protect, yourself and to make your system stronger, and then also we know, as we talked about the heat shock proteins, I call them the personal trainers. They're also the ones I used to always have. I've told this story before, but during COVID, I was in my sauna every day, and I did this, visualization when I was lying there, because I was in the solo, and I did this visualization that my heat shock proteins are literally they're all putting on armor, my cells, and they're just they're all getting I've got these gladiators going on inside my body that I'm going to slay anything so that I am not getting sick and I'm just going to stay healthy. And so that's literally one of the ways that infrared can help. It makes your body stronger. It makes you be able to fight disease in a natural, safe way.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then the other piece of the puzzle, obviously, is reducing toxic load automatically is going to free up the immune system to deal with pathogens as they come in. We often talk about the bucket, our bucket of stressors and toxins. And it's when that bucket overflows that often we will show signs of illness. Well, if we can use different modalities to reduce what's in the bucket, then we give ourselves, it's really about building resilience, right? Yes. It's having the capacity, giving the body more capacity to deal with whatever it comes across. And I think that, to your point with the immune system, if we can help to it always comes back to mitochondria, it always comes back to cellular energy. When you were talking about the cardiovascular system earlier, I'm sitting there going, yeah, and the heart is filled with mitochondria. So we're helping there. And when it comes to cognitive health, I don't know if you have data on that, on cognitive health, but the brain is filled with mitochondria again, and the immune system relies on mitochondria. Like everybody relies on these little engines.
They're so important. You can't speak about it enough, to help people understand, because we need to be taking a proactive approach to building as many engines as possible. And if you know of a way, like with infrared, especially when you combine the heat and the light, because yes, there's data on cognitive function with heat, as far as increase in circulation, increasing oxygen to the brain, increasing flow, and then the light energy penetrating and helping to literally power on. You begin back to that solar panel analogy. It's like, I'm now activated. Yeah. And so now I'm unlocking a lot of the areas that I'm stuck. When I think of your bucket, I think of, our goal is to have that thing flowing, right? So you're not overflowing, you're emptying and you're cleaning and, you're recycling. I loved also your word. I had to mention it because it's one of my new favorite words, resilience. I just love that. It's such a powerful word. It was hard to say. But I love
on word, not resilience, just to be clear. So
yes, I love that. I love the word resilience. And I think part of, we haven't talked a lot about stress, but part of what makes that body more resilient is putting it into a state that has, lower cortisol and has just being able to breathe, just breathing more fluidly alone, helps with your cognitive function. And if you can do that while receiving infrared energy then you're going to come out less stressed, more balanced, more energy. It's going to help that mitochondria do its job in a more effective way. And you're going to feel better as a result.
Yeah, 100%. And you're going to function better. And I think the stress piece is huge, but I think it brings us back to what this modality brings to the table, right? It does it in a way that feels good, as simple as that sounds, right? And is still pushing the system to be better while delivering energy at the same time. So we're kind of it's kind of like tough love in a sense, without being too tough on the tough, right? Like too harsh on the tough. So it's part of what there's many things I love about it, but this is one of the things that I really love, is that you feel like you're working with your body more than you are
against it.
And I think it's very powerful for a lot of people. I think it's what really brings a lot of value. So, okay, so I know you're going to have to run away on me pretty soon. So there's a couple of other things I'd love to talk about, because I think that, so we're in the world of infrared saunas. We're in this world of an electrical device in our home. In our space, we talk a lot about EMFs. We talk a lot about off-gassing. One of the magical things about putting together this sauna in my house was first of all, how well designed it is, because I think pretty much everybody on the planet at this point has had to put together some kind of IKEA thing at some point and lived the trauma of holes in the wrong place and little plugs that don't work and things that don't exactly fit. And you're stuck with all these, and it usually happens close to the end when you're too far gone to put it back in the box, and and you have a dysfunctional piece. This Sunlighten, the way that you guys engineered it, it's almost like it assembles itself. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
I have to commend you on that. Because
you.
I was intimidated. I was like, uh-oh. And I didn't even have a fight with my husband. It was awesome.
Man, that in itself, not fighting with your husband over putting something together, that's success. My goodness. Like whenever we get something like that at home, our house, in fact, when we could put our sauna together forever ago, our COO, Randy Brown, came over because I thought, I want some, and I'll cook dinner and I'll like make it with so much love and we'll have a fabulous dinner and you guys can put the sauna together. So,
Back up.
yeah. And I mean, they had so much fun. They're like, this was so, so easy.
Yeah.
So anyway,
but let's talk about the EMFs and let's talk about materials. Material, like, because glues can be a problem and different materials can be a problem. So, let's talk about how Sunlighten has addressed this, and then let's maybe help people to understand, like, if you're going to buy a sauna, what are the questions you need to ask? Like, what are we looking for in an infrared sauna?
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so as far as EMFs, and I'll address EMFs specifically, but I also want to touch on our intentions behind all of our materials, because we are extremely intentional about every part of the sauna to making sure that we are delivering not only the most effective, but the healthiest and safest product available. I mean, because our goal here is to make you feel better. And that's ultimately our promise is we want you to feel better. We want you to be able to do more of what you love to do and live the fullest life. So in order to do that, you need to have the healthiest sanctuary, behind me. And so on EMFs, that's a project we've worked on from the very beginning in the basement, and we still, with every new addition, every new change, we're constantly making sure that we're not doing anything to increase the EMFs. We have had it tested. This is important. Third-party tested on Impulse. All the other ones that didn't have the multiple wavelengths, that was easy to cancel out. That's like easy canceling. But once you start adding more wavelengths and you have a control panel and then I mean, there's more electronics, so that's going to cause a chance. But we finally found a way years ago to cancel everything out, and we had it tested. And you can it's on our website. You can read the data if it's of a concern to you. But it's just really important that everybody knows it's extremely safe. Same as glues, same as any materials that we use. Everything is safe and non-toxic. My favorite material that we source is our wood, and I'm just really passionate because the process is made with so much love. When you talk about energy and that change in the water molecules, love and versus the other aspect, the company that we use. Yeah, in fact, we have a video on our website if anybody's interested in exploring and reading more about the company that we work with. They're so passionate about their wood. It's renewable. It's there's no harmful oils. Everything is purely safe and natural, and just comes from a really great place. So that was, I tried to go really fast to help everybody understand as far as what to look for. What's most important out of everything is the effectiveness, the quantity, the absorption rate, how much infrared am I getting into my body. So, it's kind of like, you think of like a multivitamin, or you think of a supplement. When you're looking at your orange juice, whenever you're putting something into your body, you want, if you're taking vitamin D, you want the optimal vitamin D your body is going to absorb at the most effective rate, so that it's not just eliminated and you're wasting your time and money, right?
Right.
And that's what Sunlighten has done. And we did that years and years ago. Thankfully, at the very, very beginning of our company, is we found the materials to deliver the most infrared dense wavelength that is absorbed more effectively than any other product on the market. And that's really what's most important. And we did a study to validate that. That compared, it was a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trial. I know, I say that 10 times fast. Where we did our sauna, our infrared sauna, versus a placebo, which looked exactly the same, but it had different infrared heaters. And ours had statistical significant reduction in blood pressure and removal of toxins and change in quality of life scores, and the other one did not. So that just shows you that it does matter. While infrared is a natural wavelength that comes from the sun, and getting some of it from the sun is better than nothing, it does matter how much you're receiving into the body and how easily and readily it is absorbed for the optimum result. It makes a difference. So a little infrared is still going to be better than no infrared, but if you can find a way to get 100%, almost our patent is on 99% absorption, that's the ideal. So that's number one. Safety, we already talked about. That's really important. Goodness, we've talked about this, back to analogy of multivitamin, Impulse is like the multivitamin of all multivitamins. You can't get, more of the infrared spectrum into your body than the product behind me. You get the far infrared, mid infrared, near infrared, and red light. So 2 lights, 2 heats. And that is, in my opinion, what I would look for. And
you hold patents on the ceramic, not ceramic, the carbon heaters, right?
Yeah, we hold a patent our patent is for, you can't have 2 or more wavelengths delivered independently in anything else. So if you see that, they're either not doing it and they're just saying that they are, or there may be some behind the scenes stuff coming from us. But we are the only ones that we separate all of our wavelengths. That's something that we haven't really talked about, and I don't actually normally talk about, but here's why it's important. Because when you separate the wavelengths, we talked about how we're targeting at the very beginning, the different systems, right? And we're making an impact on the body in different ways. In order to do that, you really can't do it unless you get 100% of each wavelength separately. So it's kind of like when you combine shampoo and conditioner, you're not getting 100% shampoo on your hair.
Right.
You're getting a blend of shampoo and conditioner in one product. So it's cleaning and conditioning at the same time, but you're not doing it separately. With Impulse, you're doing it separately. You're getting 100% of far infrared, 100% of mid infrared, 100% near infrared, and 100% of red light. Versus those other products on the market that do blend, they have a blend. Like shampoo and conditioner.
You end up with hair that's neither super clean nor super conditioned. Shampoo's trying to clean, the conditioner's trying to condition. You're at opposing.
It gets a conflict, which is I loved your analogy of saying, this is a modality where your body is working with it, right? The body is sitting there going, yeah. Like, I love this energy, and it's responding and it's working with, the heat and the light to give you a fuller, more vital body, turning back the biological clock and making you, look and feel, the best that you can.
All about longevity, friend. Longevity and health span. Okay, so last 2 quick fire questions, and then I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
Number 1, clothes or no clothes? Should be
so many things went through my head. Sorry. So as little clothing as possible is definitely ideal, especially the heat part of the wavelength will still be absorbed. The light, there is a connection between closer and as little barriers as possible, definitely for optimal penetration.
Great. And should people be drying the sweat off of themselves? I saw a comment somewhere of some guy saying, yes, but once you start sweating, that absorbs the light and it somehow is a hindrance to one of the light. And I can't remember exactly what he was saying, penetrating, which I didn't fully believe him, but I thought, okay, well, if there's something to that, should we be toweling the sweat off as we're sweating?
I mean, I don't find that necessary. I think I
like the sweat personally.
It
makes me feel happy.
Yeah, and I do too. And I also, people should pay attention on that note. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but because it's common for me. But when you look at your sweat, take a look at your sweat when you're inside a Sunlighten sauna. It is different sweat than if you go for a run or you're doing exercise, right? It's more viscous, it's oilier, it's larger. So you talk about the change, in your water molecules and the change in structure. It's really interesting. So I don't ever, wipe off my sweat, and I've never.
Like my sweat. I love that feel, and I actually love seeing it pop up.
Yeah.
Don't you? Like, I
Yeah.
think it's very cool. Okay. And one more is empty stomach. Does it matter if
Oh,
somebody's
wow.
eaten? Like, these
That's
are
a
all like
no,
cuckoo
that's a great
questions,
question.
but
Nobody's ever asked me that. That is a great question. I mean, think about that for a second. As far as I'd love to hear your
yeah, I have a
opinion.
theory about it, but
Yeah,
I
I
was
want to hear
curious
your
to know.
theory. I mean, I am a morning, like my routine is a morning Sunlighten user, and I always have my hot water with lemon. So I don't ever eat before.
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts?
I think it's better away from food.
Mm.
I think that when you've had a big meal, your body's busy, right? It's going through digestion, it's assimilate, like it's got a lot of work to do. And now all of a sudden you're throwing something else at it. And maybe, I don't know if there's a study about this. Maybe there is or there isn't, but from a, from a logical perspective, and the body does work on a certain degree of logic, multitasking, the body can multitask, but that it may be one of those situations of shampoo and conditioner together again, where you've got too many things going on, right? If you're asking the liver and to detoxify, so I'll sometimes use something like a Quicksilver liver sauce before I go into the sauna to get the liver moving and to release and get some more active detoxification going on. If I've just had a meal, it's just, there's too much going on. So for me, I think it's better, as you're saying, I use it post workout and I work out early in the morning.
Yeah.
So I might have my amino acids before and during the workout. I'll take my mineral supplement and my electrolytes, all that kind of thing. But the food piece is really, it comes after
Yes.
for me. So I was just curious to know if you had a different perspective on that.
That's exactly, I mean, you just described, exactly the way I do and I was just talking to, we have a day spa here that's in our building, Sunlight Day Spa, and I was talking to some of the therapists.
That must be nice.
It is. Yeah, it doesn't suck. I'll tell you that. It
doesn't suck.
It's really
of the podcast.
It's fantastic when you walk in the door and you're greeted by these wonderful staff that are at Sunlighten Day Spa that are there to help the community and et cetera. So, but we were talking about, they were asking about timing of sauna, because we obviously have Sunlighten Saunas in the day spa, and we also offer massages and facials and body reps and different types of treatments. And they were asking about, what is the ideal way? And I always recommend it to be the last thing that you do, because especially post massage, because you're moving the body and you're doing lymphatic work and you're mobilizing, you're starting the mobilization of your body. And then we were having this wonderful like bucket cleaner come in with infrared, and that's kind of the coup de grace. That's the like the end of the therapy. Same thing as in the morning. I'll do everything I can and get a workout in, dry brush, anything I can for mobility and movement. And then I will, end with using my Sunlighten.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot. I've noticed actually that if I get on my vibration plate before the sauna, I feel like the sweat comes up faster and easier, right? You get things moving. And I'll talk to people, look, if you don't have a vibration plate, if you have a rebounder, bounce. If you don't have a rebounder, skip, like jump up and down for a few minutes, like get your circulation going and then get into that sauna, or maybe do it in the sauna or dry brush, as you said, in the sauna while your sauna is warming up. Like I love being in the sauna during the warm up phase, because it brings me up to temperature with the sauna kind of thing. So, okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of ground. You're probably late for your meeting, so I apologize for that. So if people want to learn more about Sunlighten and they have any interest, and this podcast drops on Black Friday. So I think you've got some really amazing deals happening from now right through the holiday season. And I think we were talking before the podcast, people can save up to $1,000 off their units. And correct me if I get the URL right or wrong. It's sunlighten.com.
Yes, Sunlighten.com, but they need the most important thing, more than anything else that I've said today, the most important thing I'm going to say is right now, make sure you use the code that I'm sure you'll have in the notes. I believe it's Nat Longevity.
Yeah, Nat Longevity, one word.
Yep. So that's what you need. That's your key to unlock your discount. And we take the holiday season very seriously here at Sunlighten, and we are working around the clock and whatever we can do to help, and we look forward to talking with you all, and you can just give us a call. It's the easiest thing to do, or you can fill out a form, but calling, and especially during the holidays, because it's so busy. It's if you really want to get a hold of somebody, and we can also guide you. There's 4 different choices here at Sunlighten. So we talked a lot about Impulse, but there's other saunas that are also great fits. And we don't want you, if you don't need all 4 wavelengths, and right now you're just getting started, you just want the foundational. We also have a brand new red light panel standalone by itself. So we have many different choices that to offer you during the holiday season to get started, and we're here for you to do just that.
Well, I love it. And to me, getting, if as a family, you can sit down and say, this is the year we're going to invest in our health.
Yeah.
And, this is going to be our big gift to ourselves this year. I think if you have the capacity to do that and the space in your house, it's a heck of a gift, because it just keeps on giving. So, Connie, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for all that you do. And guys, we'll see you again soon. Happy Black Friday. Happy shopping. And once again, it's sunlighten.com and Nat Longevity. Thank you.
Thank you so much.